Welcome to DMI's Next Sale, the podcast that covers everything financial professionals like you need to know in the annuity and life insurance space. Join us as we talk with experts about products, sales techniques, operations, and current events that directly affect your next sale.
Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're going to be talking about sequence of returns risk. And this is something that should be on every advisor's radar right now, especially if you're working with clients who are nearing retirement.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. This is the type of risk that can really make or break retirement, and it's especially important during that 5-year window, both before and after retirement.
Oh, absolutely. And what's so scary is that most clients, they don't even see it coming. Yeah. They might be looking at their portfolio and thinking, it's had good average returns over the years, but that doesn't really tell the whole story, does it?
No, not at all. It's not just about the average return, it's about the timing of those returns. You could have a couple of bad years at the beginning of retirement, and if you're taking withdrawals during that time, that can really be devastating.
Yeah, let's kind of paint a picture here for our listeners. So let's say you have two clients. They both have identical portfolios, the same average return over time. But one client retires right before a market downturn, and the other retires right after a strong bull market. What happens?
Well, that's a perfect illustration of sequence of returns risk. The client who retires right before that downturn could see their savings just disappear, even if the market recovers later on, because they're selling while the market is low to fund those withdrawals. That leaves them with less principal to grow when the market recovers. The other client, the one that retires into the bull market, they're in a much better position.
It really is heartbreaking. You work your whole life, you finally reach retirement, and then bam, a couple bad years in the market and everything's derailed.
Yeah.
And like you said, most clients, they don't even realize this risk until it's too late.
And that's where we as advisors have to come in. We need to make this risk real for them, explain it in a way they can understand and offer them solutions. Frankly, in today's environment, advisors can't afford to ignore this risk. It's just too important.
Yeah, I think you're right. So for all of our listeners out there tuning in today, that's what this deep dive is all about. We're going to break down sequence of returns risk so that you can explain it to your clients, and then we're going to give you some strategies that you can use to help protect them.
And let me tell you, once you have a good handle on this, you're going to stand out from the crowd. Clients are going to appreciate that you are being proactive, and it will help you build trust and loyalty.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You want to be the advisor who's anticipating problems, not just reacting to them.
Exactly. Think about it. What sounds better to you selling a product or helping someone achieve their dreams?
All right, so let's get into some solutions. The material that we got from DMI highlights a few strategies.
Yeah, and I think one that's especially relevant given what's going on in the market right now is fixed indexed annuities, or FIAs.
Now, I know that annuities can be kind of a complicated topic, so let's break it down for our listeners. Why are FIAs such a good tool to use against sequence of returns risk?
FIAs have a unique set of features that can be really attractive to clients who are a little more risk-averse in approaching retirement. Essentially, they offer a stream of guaranteed income, kind of like a pension, and that can act as a safety net in case the market gets volatile.
So what you're saying is that even if the market crashes, a portion of their income is still going to be there.
That's exactly right. You get guaranteed minimum interest rates growth that's tax-deferred, and you even have the potential for income that lasts your entire life. This can be a really powerful tool, especially in those first few years of retirement when sequence of returns risk is the biggest threat.
Yeah, it's like you're taking a big chunk of that risk and just getting rid of it.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have a client who's worried about running out of money before they die, that peace of mind is really priceless.
It really is. It can mean the difference between someone who enjoys their retirement and someone who stresses about money constantly. Remember that statistic we saw? 61% of Americans say that they're more afraid of outliving their savings than they are of dying. That shows you just how important this really is.
That's a very real fear. And we as advisors need to address it head on. I'm picturing a client who has to keep working into their 70s because they weren't prepared for sequence of returns risk. And it seems like that's happening more and more these days.
Sadly, it is. I actually read a story recently about older people having to take jobs at big box stores because they ran out of money in retirement. It really makes you realize what we're dealing with here.
It really emphasizes why these conversations are so important. We have a responsibility to educate our clients and make sure that they have the right tools to protect themselves.
I agree with you there. When we offer solutions like FIAs, we're not just trying to make a sale, we're offering people security and confidence. And that's how you build those long-term relationships.
It's about being a true advocate for their retirement.
Exactly. And that's really what we'll be diving into at the DMI webinar that's happening on January 21st. They'll be covering everything from how to explain this to clients to specific strategies for using FIAs in your clients' plans. They'll even have some marketing materials that you can use that have already been approved for clients.
So if you're listening out there and you want to be the go-to expert on sequence of returns risk and really set your business apart, this webinar is a can't miss. We'll give you all the details that you need at the end of the show. For now, let's get back to the basics. We've talked about the problem. Now let's look at some more solutions, starting with diversification.
Diversification is like the golden rule of investing, and it plays a critical role when you're trying to protect your clients from sequence of returns risk. When you diversify your investments across different asset classes, you can reduce the impact of any single investment on the performance of the overall portfolio.
So it's kind of like the old saying, don't put all your eggs in one basket, right? If one investment goes south, the others can kind of pick up the slack.
Exactly. And that's especially important in those first few years of retirement. If part of the portfolio is invested in things that aren't tied to the stock market as much, they might actually do better during a downturn. So then you have something you can draw from without having to sell stocks at a loss.
That's a good point. It's like having a backup generator when the power goes out.
You got it.
Ah.
And that can make a big difference when you're talking about making a retirement portfolio last. Now, another strategy that can work is delaying retirement, although I know that's not always popular.
Yeah, that could be a tough sell, especially for people who've been looking forward to retirement for a long time.
Yeah.
But I can see how it would help financially.
Oh, absolutely. Even pushing retirement back a couple years can have a huge impact. You can keep contributing to your retirement accounts, and if the market dips, you can buy low. Plus, those savings have more time to grow before you have to start taking money out.
So you're basically giving your portfolio more time to weather the storm before you need to tap into it.
Exactly. And you might even increase your Social Security benefits by waiting to claim them. Of course, this isn't the right move for everyone. It really depends on your health, your job, and what you want to do in retirement.
Right, you have to look at the big picture and figure out what makes sense for each person. But it's definitely a strategy that's worth talking about, especially with clients who are worried about sequence of returns risk.
I agree. As advisors, we need to be ready to have these conversations. Help them understand the complexities and make good decisions.
Speaking of good decisions, let's talk about a tool that we usually think of for protecting loved ones, but that can actually help with sequence of returns risk, too. Life insurance.
That's a great point. A lot of people think of life insurance as just a death benefit, but some types of policies, like permanent life insurance, can actually have benefits during retirement, too.
So it's not just about leaving money behind. It can actually give you more financial flexibility while you're still alive.
Exactly. Permanent life insurance policies usually build cash value, and you don't have to pay taxes on that growth. And then you can access that money during retirement, usually without having to pay taxes on it right away.
So it's like another savings account that grows tax deferred, and you can use it if you need to.
You got it.
Yeah.
You can use that money to add to your retirement income, cover unexpected expenses, or even leave a legacy. And unlike traditional retirement accounts, you don't usually have to pay more taxes when you take money out of a life insurance policy.
Well, that's a big plus, especially if you're trying to keep your tax bill down in retirement. So you've got FIAs, diversification, delaying retirement life insurance. It sounds like we have a lot of weapons in our arsenal to fight sequence of returns risk.
We do, and the key is knowing which tool to use and when. You have to look at each client, their risk tolerance, their income needs, and their goals for retirement. And then you build a strategy that fits their situation.
It's like being a financial architect, building a retirement plan that's strong and beautiful.
Right. I like that analogy. Just like an architect doesn't use the same blueprint for every building, we shouldn't use the same retirement plan for every client.
Now, you mentioned earlier that the DMI webinar on January 21st is going to dig deeper into these strategies, especially FIAs. What can our listeners expect to learn there?
Well, this webinar is designed to be super practical. It's going to give you advice and tools that you can use right away. They'll be covering how to explain sequence of returns risk to clients, how to figure out which clients are most at risk, and how to position FIAs as a solution.
It sounds like it's going to be packed with useful information.
It is. They're even going to share some marketing materials that you can use that have already been approved for clients.
That's fantastic. So if you're serious about becoming the expert on sequence of returns risk in your market, this webinar is a must attend. We'll give you the registration link at the end of the episode. Now, before we wrap up, I wanted to circle back to that statistic we talked about earlier, about Americans being more afraid of outliving their savings than they are of dying.
Yeah, it really makes you think, doesn't it? It shows you how much anxiety people have about their retirement.
It does, and it makes me wonder, What's at the root of that fear? Is it just about the numbers, or is there something more going on?
I think it's probably a mix of things. Of course, the rising cost of living, healthcare expenses, and the uncertainty of the market all play a role. But I think there's also a deeper emotional side to it.
What do you mean?
Well, retirement is a huge life change. There's a lot of uncertainty that comes with it. People are leaving their careers, their routines, their social circles, and they're moving into a new stage of life with new rules, new expectations, and a future that's less certain.
So it's not just about having enough money to pay the bills. It's about having a sense of purpose, a place to belong, and a feeling of security.
That's exactly right. And that's where we as advisors can really make a difference. It's not just about managing their money, it's about helping them through this transition,
Yeah.
giving them reassurance, and helping them create a retirement that's not just financially secure, but also personally fulfilling.
I like that. It's about being more than just an advisor. It's about being a coach, a mentor, someone they can trust.
Exactly. And when we can address both the financial and the emotional sides of retirement, we can truly make a difference in our clients' lives.
Now, earlier we talked about using real-life examples to help clients understand sequence of returns risk. Do you have any stories that illustrate the impact of this risk, either good or bad?
Sure, I do. I worked with a couple recently. Let's call them Bob and Susan. They were getting close to retirement and they had a pretty good nest egg, but they were worried about the market going up and down and how that would affect their retirement income.
Sounds pretty typical.
Yeah.
How did you approach that conversation?
Well, I started by letting them know that I understood their concerns, and then I explained sequence of returns risk using an analogy.
What kind of analogy?
I compared it to a bucket of water with a small hole in the bottom. If you keep adding water to the bucket, it's going to stay full, even with the leak. But if you stop adding water, eventually the bucket's going to empty, even if the hole is small.
So the bucket is their retirement savings. The hole is the money they take out, and the water is their investment returns.
Exactly. The point is that if they have some bad returns early in retirement when they're also taking money out, it can drain their savings much faster than they think.
I like that analogy. It's easy to understand. Did they get it?
They did. They understood the concept and the risks right away.
So what did you recommend?
We talked about a few different things: diversification, delaying retirement, and adding an annuity to their plan. In the end, they decided to put some of their savings into a fixed indexed annuity. That way, they would have some guaranteed income no matter what the market did.
That's great. So now a portion of their retirement income is protected from sequence of returns risk.
It is. And they feel a lot more secure knowing that they'll be able to cover their basic expenses no matter what the market does.
It just shows you that understanding sequence of returns risk and using the right tools can really make a difference in someone's retirement.
It does. And it reminds us why these conversations are so important. We have to educate our clients and give them solutions.
We need to be proactive, not reactive. Now let's switch gears for a minute and talk about communication. We talked before about how important it is to explain these financial concepts in a way that clients can understand. Any tips on how to do that effectively, especially when we're talking about something as complex as sequence of returns risk?
Absolutely. The key is to keep it simple and relatable. Avoid using jargon or technical terms that will just confuse them.
So basically, talk like a normal person, not like a finance professor.
Exactly. Use stories, analogies, and pictures to help them visualize the concept. Remember, people connect with stories and images more than they do with abstract ideas and numbers.
That makes sense. Can you give us an example of a story you might use to explain sequence of returns risk?
Sure. Let's say you have two clients both retiring with $1 million. One client loses 20% in the market their first year of retirement, while the other client gains 20%. Now, if they're both withdrawing 4% of their portfolio each year, the client who lost money is going to have a lot less to work with going forward.
So even though they started with the same amount of money, their outcomes are totally different just because of when the market went up or down.
Exactly. And that's the core of sequence of returns risk. It's not just about how much your investments return on average, it's about when those returns happen.
That's a really good example, and it's easy to follow. Any tips on using visuals?
Visuals can be really powerful. You could use a simple line graph to show how two portfolios with the same average return but different timings of returns perform over time. Or you can make a chart that compares the ending balances of two clients after different market scenarios.
Those are good ideas. The important thing is to make it visual and impactful.
Exactly. You want to create something that clients will remember and that will help them really grasp how important this risk is.
Now let's talk about a specific type of client who might be especially vulnerable to sequence of returns risk. People who are close to retirement and have a lot of their savings in stocks. Why are they at higher risk?
Well, they're higher risk because they're about to switch from saving money to spending money.
Meaning they're going to start taking withdrawals instead of making contributions.
Exactly. And if the market takes a dive early in their retirement, it can really snowball. They're selling investments at a loss to cover their withdrawals, which makes their savings shrink even faster. That leaves them with even less to recover when the market eventually goes back up.
So it's like a double whammy: market losses plus withdrawals, shrinking their principal.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to talk about sequence of returns risk with these clients and come up with strategies to help them.
Now, you mentioned earlier that DMI has put together some marketing materials that advisors can use to educate their clients about sequence of returns risk. Can you tell us more about those?
Sure, DMI has created all sorts of resources like brochures, flyers, presentations, and even videos that explain sequence of returns risk in plain English.
So advisors can just grab these materials and start using them with their clients.
That's right. They're professionally designed, customizable, and they follow all the industry regulations.
That's great. It sounds like a great way to save time and make sure that clients are getting accurate information.
It is. And these materials are designed to be interesting and informative. They use visual stories and real-life examples to help people understand sequence of returns risk.
So they're not just boring technical documents.
Not at all. They're designed to grab people's attention, get them talking, and help them realize how important it is to address this risk.
That's awesome. Where can our listeners find these materials?
They can find them through their DMI My Back Office account.
Perfect. We'll also include a link to the DMI website at the end of the episode. Now let's talk about annuities again. You've mentioned that FIAs can be a good way to protect against sequence of returns risk, but I know some advisors aren't so keen on recommending annuities. What are some of the reasons for that, and how would you respond?
That's a good question. Annuities, like any financial product, have their good and bad sides. And it's important to understand those before recommending them to clients.
So what are some of the common pushbacks you get?
One thing I hear a lot is that annuities are complicated and hard to understand.
I can see that. They can be confusing, especially for clients who don't know much about the different types and features.
Exactly. That's why it's so important for advisors to really learn about annuities so they can explain them clearly to their clients.
So it's about being the expert in the room, the one who can break it down and make it simple.
Absolutely. And it's also about choosing the right annuity for each client's needs. Not all annuities are the same.
That's a really good point. You're not just trying to sell a product, you're trying to find the right solution.
Right. Another thing people worry about is that annuities can tie up their money for a long time, and they won't be able to get to it if they need it.
That's a legitimate concern.
Mm.
People want to know they can access their money if there's an emergency or if their situation changes. How do you respond to that?
Well, for starters, most annuities have some level of liquidity. They usually allow you to withdraw a certain percentage each year without any penalty. And there are also features like nursing home waivers or terminal illness riders that let you withdraw money without penalty under certain circumstances.
So there are ways to access your money if you need to, but there might be some limitations or penalties.
That's right. And it's important to be upfront with clients about those details so they understand the rules of the annuity contract.
Transparency is key, as always.
Absolutely. Another concern I hear is that annuities can be expensive with high fees eating into their returns.
That's a valid point. Fees can definitely make a dent in your earnings. How do you address that?
It's true that some annuities have higher fees than others, but you have to weigh those fees against the benefits that the annuity provides.
So you don't just look at the fees by themselves. You look at the value you get in return.
Exactly. And you want to choose annuities that are priced competitively and offer a good deal.
That makes sense. Any other common concerns?
One more I hear sometimes is that annuities are only for older people who are close to retirement.
Yeah, I've heard that one too. People think annuities are just for retirees, not for younger investors.
Right. But the truth is, annuities can be useful for people of all ages. It really just depends on their goals and their circumstances.
So it's not about how old you are, it's about what you want to achieve with your money.
Exactly. For younger people, annuities can be a way to save money and avoid taxes or to create a guaranteed income for later in life. And for older people, they can provide income and help protect against the risk of leaving too long.
So it's about understanding how flexible annuities can be and how they can fit into different financial plans. Now let's talk about something that's been a big concern lately: inflation. How do annuities protect against inflation eating away at the value of your retirement income?
That's a really important question, especially with inflation being so high recently. But the good news is that many annuities have features that can help protect you.
So they're not just helpless against inflation.
Not at all. Some annuities have income options that adjust for inflation. So the payments you get actually increase over time to keep up with the rising cost of living.
So the income you get isn't fixed. It can actually go up to keep up with inflation.
Exactly. And other annuities have riders that let you buy additional income units later on, so you can increase your income if inflation becomes a problem.
So there are ways to address the risk of inflation, but you need to think about those features when you're choosing an annuity.
Absolutely. And you should always talk to your clients honestly about their expectations for inflation and how that might affect their retirement plan.
Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about the advisor's role in all of this. We've talked about how complicated sequence of returns risk can be and the different strategies for dealing with it. But in the end, it comes down to the advisor's ability to explain these things to clients and help them make good decisions. What are your thoughts on that?
I completely agree. The advisor is essential in educating clients about sequence of returns risk and helping them develop a plan to manage it.
So it's not just about giving them the facts. It's about building trust, understanding their needs, and providing personalized guidance.
Exactly. It's about being a trusted advisor, a partner in their financial journey. And that means clear communication, empathy, and a real commitment to their well-being.
I love that. It's about being more than just a salesperson. It's about being someone who truly cares about the client's best interests.
Right. And that's what separates the good advisors from the great ones. It's not just about selling products. It's about building relationships, providing value, and making a positive impact on people's lives.
Now let's imagine a common scenario. A client comes to you and they're worried about running out of money in retirement. How would you start that conversation and how would you bring up sequence of returns risk?
That's a situation that comes up all the time, and it's one that requires a balance of empathy and expertise. You want to acknowledge their fears while also giving them some reassurance and a plan of action.
So you validate their feelings, but you also offer solutions.
Exactly. You could start by saying something like, I understand you're worried about outliving your savings. That's a valid fear, and a lot of people share it. But the good news is that there are things we can do to reduce that risk and create a retirement plan that gives you income security and peace of mind.
I like that. It acknowledges their fear, but also gives them some hope.
Right. And then you can start talking about sequence of returns, risk, explaining how the timing of market returns can affect how long their savings last.
Would you use an analogy or a story to illustrate the point?
Definitely. Stories and analogies are great ways to make these complex concepts more relatable and understandable. You might share a story about a client who had a big market drop early in retirement and how it affected their lifestyle.
So you'd use a real-life example to make the risk more concrete.
Exactly. And then you can start discussing different ways to mitigate sequence of returns risk, like diversification, delaying retirement, or adding an annuity to their plan.
So you'd give them several options tailored to their specific needs and circumstances.
That's right. And you'd walk them through the decision-making process, helping them weigh the pros and cons of each option and choose what's best for them.
So you're not just telling them what to do, you're helping them make an informed decision.
Exactly. And that's what being a true partner in their financial journey is all about.
Now let's talk about something that's been all over the news lately, market volatility. We've seen a lot of ups and downs in the market, and that can be scary for clients, especially those who are getting close to retirement. How do you advise clients to deal with market volatility, and how does it relate to sequence of returns risk?
Market volatility is just part of investing. And while it can be nerve-wracking, it's important to remember that markets tend to rebound over time.
So don't panic when the market drops.
Yeah.
Just keep a long-term perspective and stick to your plan.
Exactly. And that's where sequence of returns risk comes in.
How so?
Well, if someone experiences a big market drop right when they retire, it can be really hard to recover from those losses, even if the market eventually goes back up.
Because they're taking money out of their portfolio at the same time that their investments are losing value.
That's right. And that's why you need to have strategies in place to cushion the blow of sequence of returns. Risk things like diversification, delaying retirement, or adding an annuity.
So you're basically creating a buffer against market volatility, protecting part of their retirement income from the ups and downs.
Exactly. And that can give them a lot of peace of mind, especially if they're worried about the market.
It's about creating that sense of security and stability, knowing that they have a reliable income no matter what happens in the market.
You got it. And that's why it's so important to have these conversations with clients to educate them about the risks and give them solutions.
Now, you mentioned earlier that DMI has some marketing materials that advisors can use to teach their clients about sequence of returns risk. Can you tell us more about those materials and how advisors can get them?
Sure. DMI has created a bunch of resources, brochures, flyers, presentations, and even videos that explain sequence of returns risk in a way that anyone can understand. They also have tools that can help advisors show their clients how sequence of returns risk could affect their portfolio using hypothetical scenarios and projections.
So these are resources that advisors can use to educate their clients and also to show off their expertise.
Exactly. And you can find all of them on the DMI website and through the DMI My Back Office platform.
Fantastic. We'll be sure to link to those resources at the end of the episode. Now let's talk about the role of guaranteed income in retirement planning. We've talked about annuities as a way to get guaranteed income, but there are other options too, like pensions and Social Security. What are your thoughts on guaranteed income, and how does it fit in with the discussion about sequence of returns risk?
Guaranteed income is really important in a good retirement plan, especially these days when the market is so unpredictable and people are living longer.
So you're saying that having a steady stream of income that's not affected by market swings can give people a sense of security in retirement.
Absolutely. And that's where annuities can really shine. They can provide a guaranteed income for life no matter how long you live or what happens in the market.
It's like having your own personal pension.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that can make a huge difference, especially for people who are worried about running out of money or who want to be sure their essential expenses are covered no matter what.
Now, you mentioned pensions and Social Security as other sources of guaranteed income. How do those fit into the picture?
Unfortunately, pensions are becoming less common. Many companies have moved away from traditional pension plans where you're guaranteed a certain income for life, and they've switched to plans like 401ks where your retirement income depends on how well your investments do.
So pensions are going away, which means people need to find other ways to create guaranteed income for themselves.
Exactly. And that's where annuities can be really helpful.
What about Social Security? Where does that fit in?
Social Security is a key part of retirement income for most people, but it's not meant to be your only source of income.
So it's a good foundation, but you need to add to it with other income sources.
That's right. And that's where annuities and other investments can play a crucial role.
Now, let's say you have a client who is really risk averse and wants safety and predictability in their retirement income. How would you talk to them about annuities, and how would you connect it to the conversation about sequence of returns risk?
Annuities can be a perfect solution for people who are really afraid of risk because they offer guaranteed income and protection from the ups and downs of the market.
So they can give those clients the peace of mind they're looking for.
Exactly. And when you're talking to these clients about annuities, it's important to highlight those benefits and explain how annuities can help reduce sequence of returns risk.
How would you go about doing that?
I would start by explaining what sequence of returns risk is, using simple language and examples they can relate to. I might say something like, imagine you have a bucket of water, and that represents your retirement savings. You take a cup of water out each year to pay for your expenses. If it rains a lot, the bucket will stay full even if you're taking water out. But if there's a drought, the bucket will start to empty even if you're only taking out a little bit each year.
That's a great analogy. It's really easy to understand.
Right. Then I would explain how annuities can be like a guaranteed source of rain, making sure that the bucket never goes empty.
So the annuity's like a safety net, ensuring they'll always have income, even if the market isn't doing well.
Exactly. And that can be really attractive to clients who don't like taking risks.
Now let's talk about another type of client who might benefit from annuities. People who are worried about living longer than their money lasts. How would you talk to them about annuities, and how would you connect it to sequence of returns risk?
Annuities can be particularly helpful for people who are worried about living a long time because they can provide income for the rest of their lives, no matter how long that is.
So they're basically getting rid of the risk of running out of money in retirement.
Exactly. And when you're talking to these clients about annuities, it's important to emphasize that benefit and to explain how annuities can address both sequence of returns risk and longevity risk.
How would you do that?
I might start by saying something like, one of the toughest things about retirement planning is that you don't know how long you're going to live. And if you live longer than you expected, you might run out of money, especially if the market doesn't do well in your early retirement years.
So you'd point out the uncertainty of how long they'll live and how sequence of returns risk could affect them.
Right. And then I'd explain how annuities can provide a guaranteed income for life so they don't have to worry about running out of money.
That makes sense. The annuity is like a safety net that ensures they'll have income for as long as they need it, no matter what happens in the market or how long they live.
Exactly. And that can be really reassuring for clients who are concerned about longevity risk.
Now let's go back to the idea of delaying retirement. We touched on this before, but I'd like to explore it a bit more. How would you talk to a client about delaying retirement? And how would you frame it as a way to reduce sequence of returns risk?
Delaying retirement, even for a few years, can have a big impact on how prepared a client is for retirement.
How so?
Well, it gives them more time to save and invest, and they might be able to buy investments at lower prices if the market dips. Plus, their investments have more time to grow before they start taking money out.
So basically stretching out the time they have to save and letting their money grow more.
Exactly. And that can really help minimize the impact of sequence of returns risk.
Now, I realize that delaying retirement isn't always possible or appealing. Some people are ready to retire and have other things that they want to do. How do you address that?
You need to have an honest conversation with clients about their retirement goals and what they're expecting. If they can't delay retirement, then you can look at other strategies for dealing with sequence of returns risk, like diversification annuities, or even taking out less money early in retirement.
So it's about being flexible and finding the right solution for each client's situation.
Exactly. There's no one-size-fits-all answer when it comes to retirement planning. You have to understand the client's needs, their goals, and how comfortable they are with risk, and then create a plan that works for them.
Now let's talk about another challenge in retirement planning, managing healthcare costs. Healthcare can be really expensive in retirement, and it's only going to get more expensive. How do you advise clients to prepare for these costs? And how does it relate to sequence of returns risk?
Healthcare costs are a big worry for most retirees,
Yeah.
and you need to include those costs in the retirement plan.
Yeah, so it's not just about having enough money to cover your everyday expenses.
Right.
It's also about having enough to cover healthcare, which can be a lot.
Exactly. And those costs can be hard to predict. You never know when a health problem might come up and lead to big medical bills.
That's true. So how do you tell clients to plan for those unexpected costs?
Well, there are a few things we can talk about. One is to contribute as much as possible to a health savings account, or HSA, if they qualify.
HSAs have great tax benefits, right?
They do. You get a tax deduction for your contributions, the money grows tax deferred, and you don't have to pay taxes on withdrawals if you use the money for qualified medical expenses.
That's a great deal.
Huh.
What are some other strategies?
Another is to really look at their Medicare options and pick a plan that gives them the coverage they need at a price they can afford.
Medicare can be really confusing with all the different plans and options. It helps to have an advisor who can guide them through that.
Absolutely. And another option is to consider long-term care insurance.
Long-term care insurance can be expensive, but it can give you peace of mind knowing that you'll have help with the costs if you need it.
Exactly. And it can also protect your retirement savings from being wiped out by those costs.
Now, how does this all relate to sequence of returns risk?
Well, if someone has a big market drop early in retirement and they also have high healthcare costs, it can be really tough on their finances.
So it's like a double whammy, market losses plus big medical bills.
Precisely. And that's why you have to address both sequence of returns risk and healthcare costs in the retirement plan.
So you're creating a plan that's well-rounded and addresses all the potential challenges they might face in retirement.
Exactly. And it's about having those conversations with clients, educating them about the risks, and giving them solutions.
Now let's talk about another important part of retirement planning, managing taxes. Taxes can eat up a big chunk of your retirement income. How do you advise clients to manage their taxes in retirement? And how does that relate to sequence of returns risk?
Tax planning is a crucial part of retirement planning, and you have to think about taxes when you're creating a withdrawal strategy.
That's right.
It's not just about how much money you have, it's about how much you actually get to keep after the government takes its share.
So how can we help clients lower their tax bill in retirement?
Well, there are a few strategies we can look at. One is to diversify their income sources.
You mean having income that comes from different places with different tax rules?
Exactly. Like they might have some income from a traditional IRA or 401k, which are tax deferred, and some from a regular brokerage account, which is taxable. And then they might also have some from a Roth IRA, which is tax free.
So if they take money out of those different accounts in a smart way, they can control how much they owe in taxes.
That's the idea.
Wow.
Another strategy is to think about Roth conversions.
With a Roth conversion, you pay taxes on the money now, so you can take it out tax-free later.
That's it. And even though it sounds weird to pay taxes now, it can actually save you money in the long run, especially if you think you'll be in a higher tax bracket when you retire.
So you're basically moving the tax burden to a time when you'll owe less.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And another strategy is to invest in the things that are tax efficient.
Like municipal bonds.
Exactly. Municipal bonds are usually exempt from federal income taxes and sometimes even state and local taxes.
So they can be a good choice for people who are trying to lower their tax bill.
That's right. Now, how does all of this connect to sequence of returns risk?
Well, if someone has to take out more money from their tax-deferred accounts early in retirement because the market is down, they could end up in a higher tax bracket and owing more in taxes.
Exactly. And that's why tax planning is so important, especially for clients who are getting close to retirement or who are already retired.
So you need to be proactive and come up with a withdrawal strategy that minimizes the impact of taxes on their retirement income.
Exactly. You want to make sure their money is working as hard for them as possible, both before and after taxes.
Now let's switch gears a bit and talk about something that's often overlooked in retirement planning, the emotional and psychological side of retiring. We've been talking a lot about the financial aspects of retirement, but it's not all about money, is it?
Absolutely. Retirement is a huge change in life, and it can be a really emotional time for people.
So it's not just about having enough money, it's also about finding a sense of purpose and meaning in this new phase of life.
Exactly. And that's where advisors can really make a difference. We can help them explore their interests, their passions, and their goals for retirement.
So it's about helping them create a vision for their retirement that's about more than just their finances.
Exactly. It's about helping them design a retirement that's both financially secure and personally fulfilling.
So to wrap things up, let's bring it back to our listeners, the advisors who are working with clients every day. What's the most important message you want them to take away from this deep dive?
Here's the bottom line. Sequence of returns risk is a real threat. It can derail your client's retirement dreams, and you can't just ignore it. But the good news is that you can make a difference. You have the power to change fear into confidence, to turn risk into opportunity.
By educating clients, offering solutions, and being that trusted advisor they can rely on.
Exactly. Learn the strategies we talked about today, and you'll not only protect your clients, you'll also build a better business for yourself.
And don't forget, if you want to learn more about these strategies, especially how to use FIAs to combat sequence of returns risk, make sure you register for the DMI webinar on January 21st. They'll be sharing practical advice, actionable tips, and even marketing materials that you can use with your clients to help you become a true expert in retirement planning.
It's an investment in your clients and in your own success. Don't miss out.
And that's a wrap for this deep dive into sequence of returns risk. We hope you learned a lot and found it valuable. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep making a difference in the lives of your clients.
This was DMI's Next Sale podcast. Stay tuned for our next episode. For more information about this episode, additional resources, or to learn about partnering with DMI, be sure to connect with us on your next sale at dmi.com.